I've talked before about how the left sometimes has this instinct to exclude people over relatively small disagreements, while the right, at least when it's time to win elections, tends to really be inclusive in this just vote for us kind of way. Come on in. You can support Trump but hate vaccines, be anti tax but pro labor, think the 2020 election was stolen or just had issues, but you're still in their group, at least for the purposes of winning elections, getting power, and then getting to legislate. The right accepts all of it until the election in order to win. But what we see on the left often is that if you disagree on one issue even slightly, you'll sometimes end up being treated like you're not really part of the movement at all. You're otherized. And it's what Sigmund Freud called the narcissism of small differences. We save sometimes our harshest energy for people who are mostly like us, just not quite enough. And this isn't some theory, this is really everywhere. Think about the Bernie versus Warren feud from 2020 and how it got so vicious that supporters who agreed on 90% of policy, maybe 95% of policy, started treating each other like they were enemies. And the reality is that there was very little daylight between Bernie and Warren. In fact, they were assessed at the time as the two most left senators in the Senate. But from how their supporters were fighting with each other, you would have thought it was like, Marx versus Milton Friedman or something like that. I even got sucked into it a little bit when I said in 2020, I prefer Bernie, but I'd be happy with Elizabeth Warren. These are the two most left-wing senators in the Senate. I got furious emails. How dare you, you right-winger. We knew you were a neo-lib this entire time. So that was Bernie Warren in 2020. Another example, defund the police. For some, defund the police became a line in the sand where anyone like me who wanted reform but didn't like the slogan and maybe thought that actually just flat out defunding isn't really the solution, we were written off as compromised. Oh, you've been, big law enforcement is paying you. The DNC has given you money so that you don't support defund. No, I mean, I laid out a 10-point plan, which included reform, response by non-armed individuals to certain types of calls, training, ending low effort policing, all this stuff. But I just didn't think that defund made sense as a slogan or as a practice. I was brutally attacked for that. I'm on the right, all this stuff. Another example, there are people on the left who have, maybe we'd call them more nuanced views on trans athletes in sports. Everybody would be pro-trans rights in just about every way. We agree about dignity and all this different stuff. But there are some people who say, hey, you know what? There are some sports in which I think there's an issue of fairness here. Some of them get branded as bigots and told, you're not part of the same movement that I'm part of. Wow. And then even when people agree with the general direction of the left, the second they use the slightly wrong language or they're not loud enough at the right moment, they get accused of being only performative allies or whatever, as if being imperfect disqualifies you completely. This is personal too, by the way. I've spoken out strongly in favor of an independent Palestinian state, against Israeli settlements, against Benjamin Netanyahu. But I've also said, I don't support the BDS movement. I don't support calling for the elimination of Israel. I don't support those things, but I support all the other stuff I just mentioned. You all know I've had people say I'm not part of the real left. I'm actually a right-winger with my beliefs. I've been excluded by people whose views I mostly share because I only signed off on 92%, not 100% of what they believe. So why does this happen? This is the critical part. I just finished reading the book, The Status Game by Will Storr. And in the book, he explains that a lot of this behavior is about how people try to gain status in their communities. And in many left-wing spaces, the way to earn status is by being morally pure. This is where the phrase purity test comes from. By proving you're the most principled, You're the most correct. You're the most uncompromising. You're the most left wing. And Storr leans on the work of Jason Manning and Bradley Campbell, who describe a shift in what they call a victimhood culture. In that culture, status comes from being seen as a victim or defending victims more strongly than anybody else does. And when that's the game, what you end up with is people constantly calling each other out, not just to make things better, but to prove their own virtue, to win points, because they are the ones doing the calling out. So what ends up is that instead of building coalitions, the left ends up policing its own ranks. The right rewards loyalty, and the left often rewards purity. And that difference is showing up at the ballot box. If we want to win, we have to stop turning minor disagreements into disqualifications, because then we'll just keep losing. If you don't build the tent, grow the tent, you shrink it, and then you lose power. And there's this idea that if you let more people in who aren't pure, you actually shrink the tent, when in reality, you're growing it. So I would like to see it go differently the next couple of election cycles, and let's see if it makes a difference. After researching, writing, refining, The Echo Machine, my book, is finally out. This is not just a book about how American politics got so broken. It's also about what's happening right now and what we can still do to stop things from getting worse. Trump's been back in power. The results have been even more catastrophic than many feared, with targeting of political opponents and gutting democratic institutions, laying the groundwork to even further consolidate power. But the thing is that none of this is inevitable. The same forces that brought us here can be countered if we understand how they work and what to do about them. And that's what The Echo Machine is all about. Some say that without corporate media backing, books like this can't succeed. I think we can prove them wrong. You can get The Echo Machine right now at davidpakman.com/echo on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Audible, Kindle, or by calling any local bookstore and asking them to order it. This book is more important than ever. If you care about what happens next, and I do, check out The Echo Machine today at davidpakman.com/echo.